Thomas Caffrey. I'm 26 years old and I work at the Works Bagel Shop in downtown. I think I first came to terms with having autism and having autism explain my behaviors at a very young age. I was forced to see a psychiatrist in elementary school due to problematic behaviors. And then from there on, I stuck with a doctor, and she basically told me I had autism, and it explained a lot. I think the impact of acknowledging my autism in a world where invisible disorders aren't commonly believed in, it made me know that I would have a continuous uphill struggle to not only commingle with the public, but balance my autism at the same time. My job here, I get overly stimulated by noises and facial expressions and vocal terms. So I'm restricted to the register because I can't keep up with the flow of cooking and whatnot. While growing up with autism in school, growing up with autism in the mid-90s, it was a struggle because I was only treated for ADD and ADHD in a public school. So I was almost always turned over to the next grade, no matter how bad I did, no matter how much information I didn't retain. I found my way into Keene in result of having autism, because where I wasn't communicating with normal people, where I wasn't working every day, and where I wasn't doing homework, I was online. And I met a girl who lives in this town, and then when college fell through, I was sent up here because I couldn't live just off my family.
I'm Dorothy England. I'm a senior at Keene State College, and I'm majoring in journalism. I knew Thomas. I met him when I first went to Keene State College, which was about 6 years ago. And we were both in the same art class, and we just established a friendship because we were both a little odd. And so we embraced that strangeness, and we're very open-minded to each other's behaviors and quirkiness, I guess. But then the more I got to know him, he opened up a lot more to me. And he told me that he was on the autistic spectrum. And I have a brother who has Asperger's syndrome, which they are different, but there's still some similarities. And so I think because I had that experience, that personal experience with my brother, it made it easier for us to just get along. His artwork is definitely very provoking, I think, or very thought-provoking, and I think he has especially because he's on the autistic spectrum, I think he has a much deeper understanding of the world from a perspective that most people don't always choose to see from. I think sometimes we get so hurried, but sometimes people who have that that just comfort of being socially outgoing, they have more time to be aware of their surroundings, be aware of the world around them, and so they can pick up on things that maybe an average Joe, going from thing to thing to thing to thing, doesn't really have the time to embrace. So I think his artwork really tells a story about our society, about our culture, about our world. I think that because Thomas understands what it's like to be really uncomfortable in social settings, I think he embraces the discomfort and tries to make it meaningful instead of, some of us will be that's uncomfortable, I don't want to look at it. And I think he's no, there's a reason why we need to look at it. And maybe it's not the most straightforward message of why we need to look at it, but it still invokes this understanding that by understanding it, we can understand each other too. We can become more open-minded about our own discomfort, about others' discomfort, and just become more willing as society to get along.
My name is Taryn Heon, and Tom Caffrey is one of my best friends. He is sensitive. He is very thoughtful and inquisitive, and just genuinely kind. Before he worked at the Works, he worked at Dunkin' Donuts, and he told me that working at the Works was a big step up for him. It was a big risk that he took, And he felt really, really good about himself for taking that risk and taking that step. And it meant that he had to reach out and be sociable and put himself out there and be vulnerable, which is difficult to do in social settings. Well, he does his collages, which is it's really cool the way that he composes images with wording cut out from different newspapers or magazines, and he comes up with abstract images and messages in a really unique way, and I feel like that's one of his ways of expressing himself, where he has difficulty in other forums to do that. He can do it with snippets of words and with images. And I'm really glad that he has that outlet because he's good at it. It makes him feel confident, I think, and it shows kind of how complex and interesting his mind can work.
As an adult with autism, in the world we live in now, regardless of what you believe with politics, it's a living nightmare because we are now invisible, we are now unemployable, and we are just basically living with the small connections that we could establish with people and nothing else. We're invisible. I collage to make myself visible because if I were to be able to verbalize every thought in my head to the person that wants to hear it, or to the point where I could write a novel or a book, then I would, but I'm not. My truest thoughts and my truest opinions are locked in my head, and I'm left with things like collaging to express those things. And of course, I'm putting one lost message into an art, and they could get lost in the art and still be lost and never be expressed, but in hopes that people will understand me better, I just collage, you know?